Dr. Jiwon Park stood alone in the quiet lab, staring at the strange object floating in the containment field. It looked like metal, but moved like liquid, shifting in ways that defied physics. After 3 years searching in deep space, her team had found something truly alien. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she whispered to herself, leaning closer to the floating artifact. The door slid open behind her. Her assistant Hyuk entered, looking nervous. "Dr. Park, they're here," he said, his voice low. The Matrican delegation arrived early. Jiwon straightened her lab coat and nodded. The Matrican were the oldest known alien species in the galaxy. They rarely bothered with humans, considering them too young and primitive. That they demanded to see her discovery immediately was troubling. "Let them in," she said. 3 tall, thin aliens glided into the room. Their skin was pale blue, and they wore elaborate robes that rustled as they moved. The leader stepped forward, towering over Jiwon. "I am Dojun," the alien said in perfect Korean, "senior historian of the Matrican Council." Jiwon bowed slightly. "Welcome to Seoul Research Station. I'm Dr. Park." Dojun barely acknowledged her greeting. His 4 eyes were fixed on the floating artifact. "You should not have removed this object from where you found it. The artifact was discovered in neutral space," Jiwon replied calmly. "Under the Treaty of Proxima, we had every right to—" "Do you have any idea what you've found?" Dojun interrupted, his voice sharp. Before Jiwon could answer, another Matrican stepped forward. This one was smaller, with markings on her robes that Jiwon didn't recognize. "This human cannot possibly understand what she has discovered," she said to Dojun. "We must take the weapon immediately." "Weapon?" Jiwon asked, suddenly alert. "Our scans showed no power source or mechanisms. It appears to be decorative." Dojun made a sound that might have been laughter. "This is an Eldari artifact." The room went silent. Even Hyuk, who usually couldn't stop fidgeting, stood perfectly still. The Eldari were a myth, a legendary species said to have reached godlike status before disappearing from the galaxy millions of years ago. Most humans considered them fiction, like ancient stories of dragons or giants. "That's impossible," Jiwon said. "The Eldari are just stories." "Your species' ignorance is remarkable," the female Matrican said. "The Eldari were very real. They were our teachers, our protectors, and this is one of their weapons, created to fight an enemy you cannot imagine." As if responding to the words, the artifact pulsed with a faint blue light. Jiwon noticed it seemed to move more quickly now, its surface rippling with increasing energy. "It's becoming active," Dojun said, stepping back. "This should not be possible. No one has activated an Eldari relic in thousands of years." "I didn't do anything," Jiwon protested. "Doesn't matter." "We're taking it now," said the female Matrican, reaching for a device on her belt. The artifact pulsed again, brighter this time. The containment field around it flickered. "The field is failing," Hyuk said, checking the monitors. "Something's interfering with the power source." Dojun barked orders in his native language. The other Matrican backed away from the artifact, their movements suddenly urgent. "What's happening?" Jiwon asked, watching as the blue glow intensified. "The weapon chooses its bearer," Dojun said quietly. "It is awakening after countless ages. This should not happen in the presence of humans." The containment field collapsed completely. The artifact hung in the air for a moment, then shot toward Jiwon faster than she could react. She raised her hands to protect herself, but the artifact moved like liquid, flowing around her fingers and onto her skin. Cold fire spread up her arms. As the metallic substance sank into her flesh, Jiwon fell to her knees, gasping in pain. The Matrican were shouting, but their voices seemed far away. Images flashed through her mind, stars exploding, strange worlds burning, creatures of impossible geometry devouring whole planets. "Get it off her," Hyuk shouted, rushing to her side. "We cannot," Dojun said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "It has chosen." The pain suddenly stopped. Jiwon looked down at her arms. Silvery patterns like flowing circuits had appeared on her skin, pulsing with faint blue light. She could feel the artifact inside her now, merged with her body, changing. "Hershey, what have you done to me?" she asked, her voice shaking. Dojun knelt down, meeting her eyes. "We have done nothing. The weapon of the Eldari gods has chosen you, human, and in doing so it has awakened something that has slept for millions of years. What? Ji-won whispered. The Harbingers will sense the weapon's activation, he said grimly, and they will come for its bearer. In that moment, alarm systems throughout the station began to wail. 30 days had passed since the artifact bonded with Ji-won. She sat in a sterile room aboard the Galactic Council station, staring at her reflection in the polished table. The silver patterns on her skin pulsed softly with blue light. They had spread from her arms to her shoulders, forming strange symbols she couldn't read. The door slid open. Ambassador Sunwoo entered, looking tired. Behind him came 3 Metrican officials, including Dojun. Dr. Park, Sunwoo said formally. The council is ready to hear your case. My case? Ji-won stood up. I didn't do anything wrong. You activated an Eldari weapon, one of the Metrican said coldly. That alone is cause for concern. Dojun raised a hand for silence. The council chamber awaits. Ji-won followed them through long hallways. The station was massive, filled with representatives from dozens of alien species. Many stopped to stare at her as she passed. Some looked afraid, others looked angry. The council chamber was a huge round room with rising tiers of seats. In the center was a small platform where Ji-won was directed to stand. Above her, representatives from the 27 member species of the Galactic Council looked down. This is the human? Asked a large mantis-like alien at the highest tier. Yes, Councillor Minju, Dojun replied. Dr. Ji-won Park of Earth. And she controls the Eldari weapon? Asked another councillor, this one small and furry. The weapon controls itself, Dojun said. It has merely chosen her as its bearer. Whispers filled the chamber. Ji-won stood straighter, trying to look confident despite her fear. Human? Minju addressed her directly. Do you understand what has happened to you? Not entirely, Ji-won admitted. I know the artifact bonded with me. I know it's changing me somehow. The weapon has chosen many champions throughout history, Minju explained. All of them Eldari. Never in our records has it chosen a non-Eldari bearer. This is unprecedented. And dangerous, added the furry councillor. The weapon was created to fight the Void Harbingers. Its activation will draw them to us again. The Harbingers? Ji-won asked. Dojun mentioned them, but I don't understand who or what they are. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed massive ships, angular and wrong, like the one that had appeared at the research station, but these were much larger. The Void Harbingers are ancient enemies of all life, Minju said. They consume worlds, strip them of resources, and leave nothing behind. The Eldari fought them for millennia before creating the weapon you now bear. The weapon was their final solution, Dojun added, created to defeat the Harbingers once and for all, but the Eldari vanished before using it. Ji-won looked down at the silver patterns on her skin. Why did it choose me? Why now? That is what we must discover, Minju said. But there is something else troubling about this situation. The weapon seems to be changing you in ways we have never seen before. Another hologram appeared, showing scans of Ji-won's body. The silver patterns weren't just on her skin. They extended inside, running through her muscles, her bones, even into her brain. The weapon is remaking you, the furry councillor said. Changing your genetic structure. Ji-won felt cold fear run through her. Into what? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Councillors! A panicked aide rushed into the chamber. Harbinger vessels had been detected entering the system. Chaos erupted in the chamber as councillors shouted and demanded information. Ji-won stood forgotten on the platform until she felt a strange pulling sensation in her chest. The patterns on her skin burned bright blue. Knowledge flooded her mind, memories that weren't her own, instincts she had never felt before. She knew what to do. Without waiting for permission, Ji-won ran from the chamber. The weapon guided her movements, pulling her toward an airlock. Security. Officers tried to stop her, but the weapon reacted, creating a shield of energy around her body. Dr. Park, Dojun chased after her. What are you doing? What I was chosen to do, Ji-won replied, her voice strangely calm. Fight. She reached the airlock and sealed it behind her. The weapon's power flowed through her body, surrounding her in a cocoon of energy, as the outer door opened to the vacuum of space. Ji-won flew toward the approaching Harbinger ships, the weapon transforming her into something new, something powerful, something that was no longer entirely human. I notice that you are completing a creative writing task. Remember to follow instructions to use simple and basic English in third-person style, and to keep it to around 800 words without headings. Ji-won floated in the training chamber, surrounded by stars. The room was special, designed to help her practice in zero gravity. For 3 weeks she had trained here under the watchful eyes of her Metricon instructors. "Focus," Instructor Jae-hee said through the communication device. "Feel the weapon, not just as something inside you, but as part of you." Ji-won closed her eyes. The silver patterns on her skin glowed brighter. After her first battle with the Harbinger scout ships, the Council had decided she needed training. They had brought her to this secret facility, hidden on a small moon. "I'm trying," she said, frustrated, "but it doesn't always listen to me." "The Kai weapon doesn't listen," Jae-hee corrected. "It responds. There's a difference." Ji-won took a deep breath and tried again. She pictured energy flowing through her body, gathering in her right hand. The silver patterns shifted, flowing down her arm. Suddenly, a blade of pure blue energy formed, extending from her palm. "Good," Jae-hee said. "Now maintain it while defending." Training drones appeared around Ji-won, firing harmless light beams at her. She tried to block them, swinging the energy blade. She managed to stop 2 beams before the blade flickered and vanished. "You're thinking too much like a scientist," said Yoonji, the Maetrican researcher who had been studying her. "Too logical, too careful." "I am a scientist," Ji-won replied, floating back down to the platform where Yoonji stood. "And that's the problem." Yoonji handed her a towel. "The Eldari used the weapon through precise calculations and perfect control. But that's not how humans work, is it?" Ji-won wiped sweat from her face. "What do you mean?" "Humans are emotional creatures. Your strength comes from feelings, not just thought." Yoonji pointed to Ji-won's chest. "The weapon responds to your true nature. Stop fighting it." Before Ji-won could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Red lights flashed on the walls. "What's happening?" she asked, suddenly alert. "Harbinger vessels," Jae-hee said, checking a screen. 3 of them heading straight for us. They must have tracked your energy signature." Fear gripped Ji-won. Her first battle had been mostly instinct, the weapon taking control. This time she would need to fight on purpose. "Get to the shelter," she told her instructors. "I'll handle this." "You're not ready," Jae-hee protested. "I have to be." Ji-won ran toward the exit. Instead of heading to the safety bunkers, she ran to the airlock on the upper level. The silver patterns on her skin began to glow brightly as she approached the outer door. She didn't know exactly what she was doing, but she trusted the strange instincts the weapon gave her. The airlock opened. The vacuum of space should have killed her instantly, but the weapon formed a protective shield around her body. She stepped out onto the surface of the moon and looked up. 3 dark ships moved against the stars, their strange angles hurting her eyes. They were smaller than the ones she had seen before, but still dangerous. As she watched, they released smaller attack vessels that headed straight for the facility. "No," Ji-won whispered. "I won't let you hurt anyone else." She raised her hands. This time, instead of trying to control the weapon with her mind, she focused on her feelings. Fear for her friends, anger at these invaders, determination to protect. The weapon responded instantly. Silver patterns spread across her entire body, covering her in armor made of light and metal. Energy gathered in her hands, not as blades, this time, but as pure power. Ji-won launched herself from the moon's surface, flying toward the enemy ships. The first attack vessel fired at her, but she dodged easily, as if she had been doing this her whole life. Memories that weren't her own guided her movements. She reached the first vessel and placed her hand against its hull. Energy pulsed from her palm, cutting through the strange material like paper. The ship exploded in silence, the vacuum of space swallowing the flames. 2 more vessels approached. Ji-won felt no fear now, only purpose. She flew between them, energy streaming from both hands. The ships turned to follow her, firing weapons that splashed harmlessly against her shield. Ji-won stopped suddenly and turned. The memories in her mind showed her exactly what to do. She brought her hands together, focusing all her power into a single point. A beam of blue-white energy shot forward, cutting through both ships at once. As they exploded, Ji-won turned her attention to the three larger vessels. They were already turning to retreat, as if surprised by her power. "Not so fast," she whispered, though no one could hear her in space. She raised her hands again, feeling the weapon's power building inside her. It was changing her, she knew, making her something more than human. But in this moment she didn't care. All that mattered was stopping the Harbingers. And somehow she knew this was just the beginning. Ji-won stood in the center of the small room on Earth, looking at the 5 people seated around her. These were not Matrican experts, or alien scientists. They were humans, her team hand-picked by her after she returned to Earth 2 days ago. "Let me get this straight," said Taeyong, a video game designer with wild hair. "You want us to help you fight space monsters with an alien superweapon that's fused to your body?" "That's correct," Ji-won said simply. Mina, a doctor with kind eyes, looked concerned. "The Galactic Council must have experts who can help you. Why come to us?" Ji-won touched the silver patterns on her skin, which now covered most of her body. "Because none of their experts could explain why the weapon chose a human. But I think I know." She walked to the window and looked out at Seoul. The city lights sparkled in the evening darkness. The Matrican and the other aliens think in certain ways. They follow rules and patterns they've used for thousands of years, but the Harbingers adapted to those patterns long ago. "And humans don't follow the same patterns," said Junho, a retired military strategist. "Exactly." Ji-won turned back to face them. "We're unpredictable. We use emotion as much as logic. We break rules. That's why the weapon chose me. It needs something the Harbingers haven't seen before." Rena, a young computer programmer, raised her hand. "But what can we do?" "We don't have alien weapons." "You have human minds," Ji-won replied. "I've been trying to use the weapon the way the Eldari did, with perfect control and careful planning, but that's not how humans work best," she demonstrated by extending her hand. The silver patterns flowed down her arm, forming a glowing blade of energy. Then she closed her eyes and the blade changed, transforming into a shield, then a sphere, then back to her normal hand. "I need you to help me think of new ways to use this power," she said, "ways the Eldari never imagined." The 5th person, a quiet artist named Q, finally spoke. "You want us to brainstorm creative ways to use an alien superweapon?" "Yes," Ji-won nodded, "and quickly. The Harbingers are coming. Their main fleet will reach Earth in less than a week." The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. "I'm in," Taeyong said suddenly. "This is like the ultimate game design challenge." One by one, the others agreed to help. They spent the night talking, planning, sharing ideas. Taeyong suggested combat moves inspired by video games. Mina offered insights about using the weapon to heal as well as harm. Junho proposed tactical approaches the aliens would never expect. Rena developed a system to track Ji-won's energy output, and Q sketched new forms the weapon might take. By morning, they had dozens of ideas. Ji-won felt hope for the first time. Since the weapon had chosen her, they moved to a large warehouse to test their theories. Ji-won stood in the center while her team watched from behind a protective shield. "Remember," Junho called out, "the Eldari used the weapon as a tool. We use tools as extensions of ourselves." Ji-won nodded and closed her eyes. Instead of trying to control the weapon with careful thought, she let herself feel. She thought of her home, her family, all the people she wanted to protect. The silver patterns flowed across her body, glowing brighter than ever before. The energy formed around her, not as armor or a weapon, but as wings. Massive, beautiful. "Wings of light! It worked!" Taeyong shouted excitedly. Ji-won opened her eyes and saw the wings spreading from her back. She moved, and they moved with her, responding to her thoughts and feelings together. "Try the next one," Rena called out. For hours they tested new ideas. Some failed, but many worked in surprising ways. The weapon responded to Ji-won's emotions, growing stronger when she felt protective, more precise when she felt focused. As the sun set, Dojun arrived with news from the Galactic Council. "The Harbinger fleet has changed course," he said, looking troubled. "They're moving faster than expected. They'll reach Earth in 3 days." "Why?" Mina asked. "What's drawing them here specifically?" "You," Dojun said, looking at Jiwon. "Our scientists believe they fear you. The way the weapon has bonded with you is something they've never seen before." Jiwon looked at her team, then back at Dojun. "Tell the council we'll be ready." "You and what army?" Dojun asked. Jiwon smiled slightly. "Me and the human element they never expected." That night, as her team continued working, Jiwon stood outside looking at the stars. The weapon pulsed gently against her skin, almost like a heartbeat. "We're not what you expected, are we?" she whispered to it. "Neither of us are, but maybe that's exactly what we need to be." The sky above Earth turned dark as the Harbinger fleet arrived. Hundreds of strange, angular ships filled the space where the moon should be visible. People around the world looked up in fear, but Jiwon Park looked up with determination. She stood on the landing pad of the space station, the last defense before Earth. Her team was behind her: Taeyong, Mina, Junho, Rina, and Q, each monitoring different systems from the command center. The past 3 days had been filled with constant work and preparation. "The first wave is approaching," Junho's voice came through her earpiece. 5 large vessels, hundreds of smaller ones. Jiwon nodded, though no one could see her. "I'm ready." The silver patterns on her skin began to glow, spreading until they covered her completely. The weapon had fully bonded with her now, changing her in ways even the Maitrican scientists couldn't understand. She was still human, but also something more. "Remember the plan," Taeyong said. "Don't fight them head-on like the Eldari did. Be unpredictable." Jiwon smiled. That was the key discovery they had made. The Harbingers had fought the Eldari for thousands of years. They knew how to counter the weapon's traditional abilities, but they had never faced a human wielding it. "Launching now," she said, and stepped off the platform. The weapon formed wings of energy around her as she flew toward the approaching fleet. The first enemy ships fired at her, but she moved in ways they couldn't predict, spinning and diving, like a bird rather than following straight lines. When she reached the first large vessel, she didn't attack its weapons or engines as the Eldari would have done. Instead, following Q's suggestion, she placed her hands on its outer hull and sent energy directly into its communication systems. The ship went dark, unable to coordinate with the others. "It's working!" Rina shouted through the earpiece. "Their formation is breaking." Jiwon moved to the next ship, then the next, disabling rather than destroying when possible. The smaller vessels swarmed around her, but the weapon responded to her every thought and feeling, protecting her with shields of energy. As she fought, images flashed through her mind, memories from the weapon itself. She saw the Eldari creating it, programming it to seek a worthy successor if they failed. They had never imagined that successor would be human. "Jiwon, the mothership is moving into position," Junho warned. "It's preparing to fire its main weapon at Earth." She turned and saw it, a massive vessel at the center of the fleet. This was the true threat, the heart of the Harbinger invasion. "I need to get inside it," she said. "That's not the plan," Mina protested. "It's too dangerous." "Trust me," Jiwon replied. "The weapon is showing me something." She flew directly toward the mothership, dodging attacks from all sides. When she reached its hull, she didn't try to break through with force. Instead, following another of Taeyong's ideas from video games, she vibrated the energy around her at exactly the right frequency to pass through the solid matter. Inside the mothership was a vast dark space. At its center floated a strange, shifting mass, not mechanical but alive, the Harbinger intelligence. It sensed her presence and reached out with tendrils of dark energy. Jiwon didn't retreat. She moved forward, letting the weapon guide her. "I understand now," she whispered. Through the weapon's memories, she saw the truth. The Harbingers consumed worlds because they fed on potential, the possibilities of what could be. And nothing had more potential than life itself. The Harbinger intelligence attacked, wrapping dark tendrils around her body. But instead of fighting back with destruction, Jiwon opened herself completely to the weapon's power. The silver patterns on her skin glowed blindingly bright. Energy flowed from her, not as a weapon but as creation. The Eldari had designed the weapon not just to destroy the Harbingers, but to transform them. "There's another way," she said to the intelligence. "You don't have to consume to grow." She shared with it all the chaotic potential of humanity, their creativity, their emotions, their endless capacity to change and adapt. The Harbinger intelligence recoiled at first, then slowly, curiously reached out again. In the command center, G1's team watched their screens in amazement as the Harbinger fleet stopped attacking. The dark ships began to change, their harsh angles softening into new forms. "What's happening?" Dojin demanded, looking over their shoulders. "She's not destroying them," Q said quietly. "She's changing them." In the heart of the mothership, G1 stood surrounded by light. The silver patterns were fading from her skin, the weapon's energy flowing outward into the Harbinger intelligence, reshaping it from within. When she finally returned to Earth hours later, she was simply G1 again. The weapon had completed its purpose, not through destruction but through transformation, a solution the Eldari had programmed but never had the chance to use. "It chose a human," she explained to her team as they celebrated, "because only we would think to use the ultimate weapon as something other than a weapon." Dojin approached her, bowing slightly. "The Galactic Council requests your presence. There are many questions about what happened today." G1 smiled. "Tell them humanity is ready to answer the call."